you've been warning people not to let your kind of hopes run too high with some of these pharma stocks, but the names we're talking about were, I think, generally perceived as safer because they have other drugs, obviously, to offer. So where does this leave investors, do you think?
Kelly, thanks a lot for having me. Yes, I think there's obviously a lot of trial and error going on with respect to, a variety of these COVID-19 treatments and vaccines. There's been so much progress, you could argue, over 6 months, sort of unprecedented progress. And there's also going to be setbacks we've seen with AstraZeneca, as you and Meg were talking about earlier, Johnson & Johnson and Eli Lilly. So really, my standpoint or my view on this whole sort of like spectrum is consistent in that I think there are still, many more questions than answers. There are many of these programs that are simultaneously being researched, and we sort of have to just wait and see what happens.
Yes. So tell me from an ear to the ground point of view. It sounds like, again, we're listening to the CEO, so grain of salt, but it sounds like the Lilly halt isn't necessarily that big of a deal. It doesn't necessarily mean this wouldn't work to treat people the way that the remdesivir treatment helped President Trump get through COVID and so forth. And at the same time, we just don't know what's going on with the J&J vaccine trial. So of those two, which do you perceive to be more serious?
It's such a difficult question. I don't really perceive either to be ultimately too serious. I think we're talking about one patient that has been identified in the J&J trial. That's a trial of 60,000 patients. For Eli Lilly, we don't exactly know, but it doesn't sound like more than a few patients have been identified by the NIAID on that one. So nothing is ultimately that concerning, and we could see the next headline for J&J be positive if it turns out that the patient in their trial that's under scrutiny was more of an anomaly than not, and same for Lilly. So it's really day to day, and I think the thing that is like really intriguing about all of these trials is that it's under all of the clinical trials that are going on are under such scrutiny, probably the most we've ever seen, at least in my lifetime, and I would argue in the lifetime of a lot of other people following this industry, just given how prevalent COVID-19 has become, and we're talking about it every day. So I think the fact that these trials are being viewed, so intently is a major deal here, and is probably resulting in the news being more heightened than it may as otherwise be.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.